Wednesday, March 1st, and this is Geeknights. Tonight we talk about the podcast we listen to, as opposed to the podcast we used to listen to.
Let's do this. I started a new job today. Woohoo!
So you can't just sit around the house lazing about doing nothing, yet somehow still being tired every day.
Yeah. I really wish now, while I was lazing around the house doing nothing, I was kind of like, wow, I just didn't say anything.
How can you be tired? You had all this time to do nothing.
Yeah, and in that time, I did nothing, and I kind of felt bad for doing nothing. And now that I'm doing something, I want to do nothing.
But yet, even when you were doing nothing, you were still tired all the time.
I don't know. It's sort of like if you wake up, you get some energy, but then if you don't do anything, your body goes, why the fuck did I get up? Go back to bed. You're not doing shit.
I don't know.
Sort of like the lion. The lion just kind of sits around going, "Rawr."
Are you comparing yourself to a lion?
Nah, in only one aspect.
All right.
The sleepiness.
I'll accept that.
Perhaps also a sloth. Or maybe a snail.
Meanwhile,
or a turtle.
I was at work doing my normal work, and I had a couple hours to kill at the end of the day, because mostly I was just doing mindless paperwork and telnetting into routers so I could then telnet into other routers so I could then telnet into switches so I could look at their stuff and get their serial numbers.
Wow.
Yeah, that was awesome. But I had some time to kill, so I was thinking about it, and then before I left work, I started, and I'm going to finish this at home over the next few months. I'm going to write a small textbook on how to podcast, because most podcasts, like we're going to talk about today, kind of suck. At least audio quality-wise.
Yeah. Also, I'd like to point out, this is an insult to anyone in particular, but most how-to podcasts are generally aimed at the absolute idiot, and they'll tell you, just get Audacity, plug in a microphone, and push record, and they don't give you enough information on how to do things properly.
They seem to fall into two categories. It's either that, the crap guide that doesn't really give you anything useful, and then there are the guides that, just buy a 48-port digital mixer and use the fastest Mac you can find with some FireWire, and these $500 KSM microphones, exactly what you need.
Yeah.
And no one really made a guide. I don't want to sound like I have a big head, but I think we're one of the best sounding podcasts out there, professional or otherwise.
Yeah,
At least in the top 15 or 20.
Considering that we're putting out an MP3, we make pretty much the best MP3 you can make of two guys talking.
Yeah, pretty much all the things I have to do to make it sound the 1 or 2% better is tiny trial and error, and when I get a faster computer, I got some filters I wrote that the only reason I don't use them now is that it would take 20 minutes on my slow-ass computer.
Unlike the computer I now have at work, which is a Core 2 Duo. Now, I never used a Core 2 anything before. In fact, the fastest computer I ever used for more than 2 seconds is probably that one that's right next to you right now.
See, I've been a little lucky in that at IBM I got to play around with some blade machines that were faster than I could ever fathom.
Well, I guess technically at RIT I had those big Sun servers that I would get to do stuff for me.
Yeah, but you weren't running a desktop on
it. Yeah, so at work...
I didn't run Quake on those blade servers.
Yep, so at work I have a Core 2 Duo. It's just a Dell, but I put Ubuntu on it.
Ubuntu.
And let me tell you, holy shit is it fast, and holy shit is it nice to have a wicked fast computer. Holy crap. Holy crap again.
It's been a long time since I've had a computer that responded immediately to anything I asked it to do that was trivial.
The computer I have on my desk at home is a 1.8 gigahertz Athlon XP, right? This Core 2 Duo has 2 cores. Each core is 1.8 gigahertz, but they're not the same cores. These are Intel cores of new fanciness and not old busted Athlon XP cores. So the fact that they're at the same clock speed as an old busted core, yet they're super awesome cores with a zillion times more transistors in them and better logics and efficiency. It is so stupidly fast. Oh my god. Anyway, so my new work, it's better than my old work because, there are people there. The people are cool-ish. They talk. They're intelligent and not idiots.
Well, you're making your old
exist.
job sound really bad if these are the good points.
Well,
I guess it just comes down to the fact that Scott and I know there's a lot of, our friend Alex is pretty much all our friends except for all the art people who seem really happy with what they do. We're never happy in any job, no matter how great a job is. After about a
Maybe we
month,
should have become artists.
yeah, after about a month, it's like, how many Cisco routers do you need me to configure? I did it once. It's not fun anymore.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the work at this new work is not exciting work. It's actually pretty work. But the people there seem to be cool, and they're paying me. And I had fun today, at least, even though, my day was long. But I'm sure tomorrow will be a shorter day. And hopefully I'll keep this job for a while, and we'll see where it goes. If it starts to suck, I'll just quit again.
Yeah, you got to watch out for that problem of, you interview for the 8th job, and they're like, so you've had 7 jobs in the last year.
Yeah.
And you quit all of them.
Actually, the bigger problem is, my previous job, I was alone in the middle of nowhere. So finding a new job was easy. Now I got to find a new job while showing up somewhere where there are people watching me.
It's really not hard to do.
Really?
You just take sick days.
Oh, yeah. I get unlimited sick days, technically, but if I abuse it, then I'll be in trouble.
Whoa. So how much vacation do you... I don't need to ask all the personal details of your job, but that's an interesting policy.
Yeah, it's just unlimited sick days. If you're sick, don't come into work, dumbass.
See, my company's all complicated. I don't get sick days.
But if you actually abuse the sick days, you lie or you do it a whole lot and you're obviously faking, then they'll pun you, maybe fire you.
I've never worked at a company small enough to get away with that, and I kind of wish I did now. I mean, I don't have sick days at all. I just have this kind of choice time bank that builds up over time.
We barely have any personal days, and we get 2 weeks vacation, but if you don't use vacation, then it rolls over.
Yeah, mine rolls over too. That's a really nice thing.
But also, just the default holidays, we actually get, what's it called? 2 extra days off. Oh, I get 2 days off at this company that I did not get off at the previous job.
Huh.
At the previous job, I got off Labor Day, Memorial Day, Independence Day.
You need to list all the days.
No, New Year's Day, Thanksgiving Day, Christmas Day. I think that's it.
You could have just given me the diff.
Yeah, well, anyway, the diff is now I also get off
MLK Day?
Black Friday and the day
What?
before Christmas.
You get Black Friday off?
Yep.
Huh.
And the day before Christmas, so Christmas Eve. 2 additional days off by default.
That's interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, I never understood the whole personal days as opposed to vacation days.
See, to me, a personal day was like when you have to do something that can't, you have a dentist appointment. That's a personal day to me. That's what it's supposed to be. But I guess, I don't know, it seems sort of outdated and unnecessary.
Well, especially considering, maybe it's just me, but I was always smart enough to be sure that I never had to use a personal vacation whatever day for anything like that, so I can maximize my time spent vacationing.
Yeah, it seems like the difference between the personal days is that you don't have to earn the personal days, you just get them. And the vacation you have to earn over time, Oh, well.
Yeah, I'm just really glad that I kind of strong-armed my company into giving me my vacation time up front in full, and then it accumulated ever since.
Yep.
Because I pretty much said, give me that or I'm not going to work here.
That's what I did also, so I'll see you guys at Otakon.
Oh, yeah, Otakon. All right, anyway, in the news, this is a bit of a personal news for me. You see, for any of you who use Digg, which is pretty much the premier social bookmarking, content filtration, meta, commenting, whatever, Web 2.0 fancy site that everyone uses. By the way, since we haven't talked about this in forever, we're on there. You could dig us if you want. We haven't mentioned that in a while because we generally don't care about that sort of thing, but since it comes up.
Yeah.
Anyway, a lot of people in the blogosphere, which I have a lot of colorful euphemisms for the blogosphere, but I'll just use that word. I'll use their word. I'll be nice. They've been talking about how Digg is unfair, or how Digg is manipulated by a small core of vigilantes known as the Bury-Brigade, who descend upon stories that... And there's all different theories. Some people say, oh, they bury anything that's positive about Sony. Or they bury all the truth about 9/11 or the federal income tax or the Freemasons or UFOs.
I wonder why.
Or they bury anything involving Christianity.
Oh, I wonder why.
Well, so someone made a little thing that would watch Digg, parse various things, and list who is burying things. And the Digg guy came out to point out that this list was kind of bunk and wasn't gotten very well, and he talked a bit about their philosophy of burying and blocking. Now, I read this article, I didn't think anything of it. Here at home, I actually clicked on the data that everyone was talking about. And my name came up fairly prominently as a member of this so-called Bury Brigade.
Really? Rim, is Digg, like, paying you to subvert their system and bury stories they don't like?
You see, I wish that were true. But the fact is, I am an embittered human being. And when I see stupidity or spam, I don't just bury it. It's like a mission to me. Like if I'm browsing Digg, I got some time over lunch, and I see a story like, here's the secret of the UFO that actually knocked down World Trade Center 7 because of the Freemasons. I don't just bury that. I click on whoever submitted that's profile and make sure that that wasn't just a one-off fluke. And if it turns out that they're one of those people who submits nothing but that, I proceed to bury everything they have ever submitted and then block them.
Right, so...
Also, pretty much anything stupid I see, I bury at a whim. I don't ever dig people down. I block immediately if anyone is not worth listening to. I've blocked at least 3,000 or 4,000 people to date.
So in other words, Rim is a vengeful digger. In fact, I would be hesitant to call him a digger. I would say he's a vengeful barrier.
I have buried more things than I have dug.
Yes. I mean, you give Rim the homepage of Digg and it's all new stories he hasn't seen yet. What percentage of those do you think you're going to bury?
On a given I bury an average of one story for every 2 pages of the front page news.
Wow.
Now, if that's not talking about upcoming.
Oh, God.
I pretty much bury everything because it's all spam.
Yep. So, if there's like 20 people out there who are like Rim, and, where there's one, there's more, that explains your crazy Bury Brigade conspiracy.
Well, here is the wonderful, deliciously ironic conclusion to all of this.
The story about the Bury Brigade was buried by Rim?
No. It's so much more eloquent and not eloquent, elegant than that.
All right.
So I looked at this data, and the Digg guy, Kevin Rose, basically said, yeah, this data is not 100% accurate. It got the berries right, but it didn't always say which story would have been buried, and it wasn't always right. Like, it attributed berries to people who didn't bury. So I went and I clicked on the 12 things that it said I had buried in that time. And I had actually buried 4 of them. The rest, and I looked, I had buried stories at those times, but I had buried different stories. However, I looked at the stories it said I buried that I didn't. And with one exception, I buried all of them because they deserved it. And it felt kind of good.
Rim is the mad barrier. There is no Digg conspiracy. There are just a few more people like Rim besides Rim.
Well, I could talk at length about my reasons for that, because it's not just on Digg. It's on any sort of ranking system. I always feel that in general, people are far too lenient when they grade or rank things. And they're far more willing to give something a good grade than a low grade. And there's a lot of grade inflation going on pretty much everywhere. Also, giving a very low score or using a block or a bury always has more of an impact overall than giving something a little plus or a little nudge or a little dig.
That's true. Giving something 1 dig doesn't send it skyrocketing, but giving it a bury is a lot more than counting as minus 1 dig. So if you really want to clean up the system, you can actually get ahead a lot more by burying things that you don't like than by digging things that you do like.
Also, I cite Sturgeon's Law. 99% of everything is crap, and content filtration is more important than content sorting. At least in my mind.
Yeah. So,
all right, so that's enough of that. What do you got, Captain? You didn't have any news, so it's actually my news.
That's fine. Apparently, there's some Republican, was he a senator?
He's a member of the House. Greg Walden, Republican from Oregon, who is a member of the House Telecommunications Subcommittee.
Right. This guy is worried that something awesome will happen.
Now, it's complicated because I can't tell where this guy stands because he's all over the place. But he envisions, he fears, he expects that the Supreme Court may, in various upcoming suits that he is watching, strip away the FCC's power to regulate decency on the airwaves.
Why would you worry about that? That would be the greatest day in history.
If that happens, I would probably take the day off work to celebrate with champagne.
I would also probably take the day to go to work, because I'd go to the city, and celebrate somewhere, doing something awesome. I would also be sure to listen to the radio a lot, and I'd probably go and get a TV to watch it.
See, the thing is, I think radio, right away, there'd be a lot of funny bits of people saying stuff, but I don't think
You
TV
imagine, like, as soon as the gavel comes down at the Supreme Court, like, every radio station in the whole country be like, fuckity fuck, 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 fuckity fuck, fuck. Fuck yeah. Shit yeah. Fuck shit yeah.
Shit cock.
Shit cock.
See, I don't think television, though, would change very much. I mean, I think people would start using the word fuck in television shows. The thing is, Americans use that word a lot anyway. The word has almost no impact. Maybe it's just because we're, hip 20-somethings living in downstate New York, working in New York City, and we went to a liberal, technology-filled, geeky school, and we're on internet where people swear worse than sailors ever could. But the word fuck has no impact. If I say fuck you, that doesn't really imply malice anymore. I mean, the words I have to use to imply malice are actually not obscenities. The things I could say when I'm actually angry have far less regulation and draw far less ire than the words that mean nothing to me, like fuck, shit, piss, damn, son of a bitch, whore.
Fuck you.
Fuck you.
Fuck your mom.
Your mother's a whore.
Yeah, I mean, seriously.
Yeah, but I don't know. The reason he says this is that there are currently 3 major lawsuits against the FCC from 3 major television networks over the fact that basically the FCC will fine you if you violate one of their rules. But at the same time, they refuse to publish or enumerate their rules, because if they enumerated them, then you could do anything they didn't say you couldn't do.
Yeah.
So as a result, there's this magic unwritten set of rules, and all you can hope for is that they might warn you before they fine you, but usually they don't. They just fine you. Millions and millions.
This actually reminds me of a case I read about in Texas. I think I might have mentioned it on the show before, but I remember reading about a court case in Texas where a guy was, like, fined for violating the building code or not being up to the building code. And part of the building code required that you do certain things to the building. And that certain thing you had to do to the building was some sort of patented process or item or something. And thus, it was a trade secret of some other company, yet it was part of the code. And and so he couldn't do it because he couldn't find out what to do because it was a secret. But it was the law that you had to do it. And the judge ended up saying, as I remember, I'm not 100% sure on this, that if you can't keep the law a secret, people can't follow the law if they don't know it. If something is the law, you have to tell people what the hell it is.
There's a lot of argument that this same precedent will eventually force governments to not use Microsoft software in any sort of, well, I mean, internally they could use it, but they couldn't require, say, you to submit grant applications in a Microsoft Word document.
Yep.
Or require that you have Internet Explorer to access a website on the government.
Or, require that you have any particular operating system to do your taxes online.
Yeah.
It's all good by me. But yeah, anyway, this guy, he's worried that the FCC will not be able to enforce its, twisted, illogical morals upon the broadcasting authorities.
See, it's hard to say, because once again, he's all over the place, and this article is very short.
Yeah, and then he starts saying...
He's like, the FCC, there should be an increase in FCC fines, and he also owns 5 radio stations.
And then he says something about he doesn't want, like, a nanny state. But it's like, what? You just said you did want more of a nanny state. It's like he doesn't consider punishing someone for swearing as nanny state.
Granted, this is not the best news site, and I'm not going to blame him, because they might just have not understood what he said.
Yeah, it might just be, it looks like a bad news site. I can see it from here.
It's a pretty mediocre news site.
I think the only thing that we should take out of this story is that, even if this whole story is completely BS, if the FCC ever loses its power to censor the airwaves of both TV and radio or whatever, that is going to be the awesomest time.
And yet at the same time, it's probably going to prove to all the nut jobs, at least the more rational nut jobs, that, oh look, the world didn't end. Kids aren't suddenly having naked 7-year-old sex in the streets. People are still having normal conversations. They're not continually saying the word fuck.
Of course.
Society moved on.
Of course, if it does happen, I will be the first person to purchase a UHF transmitter and have a nice porn station going on 24/7.
See, the FCC would
and I'll put the hardest core porn before the kiddies go to school and when the kiddies get home from school at 3.
You mean the Saturday morning porns?
That's right, the Saturday morning
See,
porn
the thing
tunes.
is, don't forget, the FCC will still have the power to regulate the airwaves. They just can't regulate the content of it. So you still couldn't broadcast.
Well, I just get a broadcasting license. And then they said, what are you going to broadcast? And I would say, television.
And they would say, fine, give us $10 billion, because that's what we charge.
And considering how much advertising money I would make from having a porn station, I would say, yes, sir. Here is your monies.
Because there's people who already have licenses who could just show pornography.
And
and
they do it,
related items.
Well, if they do my job for me, then my job is done. I don't need a porn station.
Things of the day. We're going to conclude Scott's somewhat theme week here.
Yes, all week the things of the day have been openers to mostly cartoon shows, but the openers are in different languages from around the world.
Oh, snaps.
Today, I give you perhaps, I don't know if it's my favorite one, because that German Sailor Moon is freaking addicting as all hell.
Das Zauberwort und du hast die Macht. Halt den Mondstein fest und spür die Kraft. Du kannst es tun. Oh Sailor Moon, kämpfe für den Sieg über Dunkelheit. Folge deinem Traum von Gerechtigkeit. Du kannst es tun. Oh Sailor Moon.
It's been in my head all day. I had to go to YouTube and listen to it around lunch just to get it out.
Yes, but here I give you something that may not be familiar to everyone listening to this podcast.
Super loco, extraordinario, fenomenoide, fenomenoide, corre hasta más no poder, fenomenoide, fenomenoide, rescata Washington DC, fenomenoide, fenomenoide, cuando no hay nada en la TV, fenomenoide, fenomenoide, su mente es de salchicha y mucho chocolate, sin control lo analizo, fenomenoide, fenomenoide.
Dexter es un genio con su máquina UNAS. Fue a mundo cibernético por un gran error casual. Se convirtió en fenomenoide, el más loco del mundo. Contra los criminales, locuras a granel.
Locuras hace a montón, fenomenoide, fenomenoide, siempre busca ser actual, fenomenoide, qué mono es, piloto fenomenal, fenomenoide, fenomenoide, sus películas hay que ver, fenomenoide, fenomenoide, salvar al mundo entero es su mayor empeño, siempre nos ayudará, fenomenoide, fenomenoide, fenomenoide.
Yes, for those of you who do not know, there was a Warner Brothers cartoon that was, I guess, created by Steven Spielberg in some way, known as Freakazoid.
Now, you know, there was kind of this progression. Like, there was Tiny Toons, which was zany humor, but it was also really kind of not based in reality, but grounded in some level of sense. It was like skits. And then Animaniacs was like the next step up, where while there were skits in it, it was a little bit more out there. Freakazoid was like 2 steps beyond that.
Well, I think the thing about Freakazoid is that it was real nerdy. Like, the plot of Freakazoid is a nerdy guy gets sucked into the internet through his computer.
Bear in mind that
and
there
turns
really,
into a superhero who is nerdy.
as far as we're concerned, there really was no internet back then yet either.
I know, so it was way ahead of its time. And almost every joke in Freakazoid is some sort of pop culture comic book guy kind of joke, and thus the show really appealed to geeks like me.
I'm gonna need more rope.
Yes, Rim has quoted the greatest Freakazoid bit ever.
Also, one of the, 3 episodes of Freakazoid I could stand to watch. I didn't like that show.
Oh, you suck.
I don't know.
Freakazoid rules.
I really liked Tiny Toons as a kid.
I like Tiny Toons also.
And I really liked Animaniacs.
I liked Animaniacs also.
Of course, then again, when I think about it, right about when Freakazoid came out is right about when I pretty much stopped watching television. Like, as it was coming out, I remember seeing that show and thinking, wow, this is just, fuck it, and I just stopped watching TV.
See, Freakazoid for me came out at sort of like the high point of Animaniacs, and it was like a double whammy. It was like, not only is this the high point of Animaniacs, but goddamn, this Freakazoid as well.
See, right around then, I was spending more and more time playing video games and messing around with my computer.
The one problem with Freakazoid was that the time slot made it inconvenient to watch, so I did not see as much of it as I wanted. But if you have not seen Freakazoid, I suggest you go on the internet and look for the episode of Freakazoid known as Candlejack and watch it because it is awesome.
In fact, I remember Scott had the worst copy.
No, that's because Ian, I think, had it on a VHS and I ripped it with the Aver.
Yeah, I was about to say exactly that.
Oh, okay.
So we have probably the worst video capture thing ever. It's an external USB 1.0 Windows only S-Video. That doesn't even take S-Video, I don't think.
I think it does.
I think it took RCA and coax.
It did. It did. Yep.
And Scott ripped this already piss-poor VHS onto this horribly piss-poor 320 by 200 MPEG, and then we watched it. It was unwatchable.
It's on YouTube now. You can find it, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, my thing of the day is the opener to Freakazoid in Spanish. And they haven't changed any of the animations, so you can still see the word Freakazoid spelled out in the alphabet that we use, that Spanish people also use. But they don't call it Freakazoid. They call it Phenomenoid, which, all right, but don't the Spanish people see that it says Freakazoid? Aren't they going to be like, what the hell's up with that shit?
Don't the Americans see that the signs are all in Japanese in their anime?
Well, but the thing is, Japanese is a different character set. It's a different alphabet. We can't, unless you know it, you don't know it. But if you're watching a Spanish show, you can figure out what the word is. And if some guy says in English, like, Freakazoid, and on the screen it says Phenomenoid, you know that something's up.
Well, anyway, by the same token, I'm finishing it out. Now, I find this one interesting, because I always wondered why people didn't do this when they had openers where they could get away with it. Like, in other languages of South Park, they had a voice actor do Kenny.
Yep.
Which didn't, I just found that kind of funny. But anyway, this show I watched semi-religiously as a kid was called Cops.
I never even heard of this show until they told me about it.
Yeah, all of us were watching the Zelda DVDs, and we saw the opener to Cops in English on the DVD as an extra, and we watched it a couple times because Cops was a pretty good show. It's kind of a cross between Tank Police and RoboCop, and Carmen Sandiego.
Carmen Sandiego's awesome. Man, if there was a DVD of, like, you could watch old Carmen Sandiego game show episodes.
Oh, the game show. I thought you were going to say the cartoon. I was going to say, what the hell's wrong with you?
Oh, fuck the cartoon. No, the game show of Carmen Sandiego.
With
People
the
don't
acapella?
realize that Carmen Sandiego started out as an awesome game show on PBS, and that was where the action was.
Oh, you mean an awesome game show where the kids on it were dumb fucks?
I know, but that's what was so great about it, is that you would sit there and
I watch a kid.
they'd be like, hey, kid, put a glowing stick on South Africa, and he'd put it in, like, Egypt, and you'd be like, fuck you, you dumbass, fuck you.
Good thing the FCC can't get us.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
no, the opener to this show is basically, other than a guy saying, blah, 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 crime, blah, 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 cops, it's just this techno kind of thing, and a guy saying the word cops over and over again, just cops, cops. And while obviously they dubbed the show in German, they didn't re-sing the song. It just says cops.
That's something I realized while researching, well, I guess researching, if that's what you want to call it, all these different openers in various languages, is that Disney and Warner Brothers and the big boys seem to be able to afford having lots of vocals in their openers, actual composed songs that didn't suck that badly. And they actually seem to also be able to afford to get people to sing those songs in other languages in other countries. Whereas smaller time studios that, usually just made shows for syndication could not afford to have their lyrics composed for their songs, and if they did, they couldn't afford to have them translated, or at least less often. Like Thundercats, if you watch it in another country, they still go Thundercats.
You know what? Thundercat would probably be a really cool word in German.
Thundercats rule.
I'm just getting that vibe.
Yeah.
All right, anyway, we didn't know what to talk about tonight. And Scott got home late, and I was playing Super Mario World for a good 45 minutes.
Yep.
And it's a Thursday. You'd think, we can talk about anything. That'd be easy. But nah, because everything we thought of was either something that would require research, which is pretty much the bane of our existence at this point, or something we didn't want to talk about anything complicated. I got a lot to say about politics right now. I got a lot to say about, I don't know, a bunch of stuff sitting on my desk. I got stories, but
I have to go to bed.
yeah, so Scott was lazy, and as a result, blaming Scott, we didn't have a topic for tonight.
So we're going to talk about those zombies.
Yep, we couldn't delay it anymore. We're going to talk about another aspect of fighting off the zombie apocalypse. Last time, I remember we talked a lot about reconnaissance, how do you figure out what's going on, but I don't know, I'm just not feeling it. I think we should talk about something else.
That sounds good to me because zombies are messy and slow, and they like to eat brains.
Hey, this is a podcast. Let's talk about podcasts.
Oh, that's going to be real good.
Well, no, I got an idea, because we actually came up with a great idea for a contest, but I'll get to that later.
Okay.
Because I realized over the past few months that my taste in podcasts and what I've been listening to has changed fairly dramatically over time. And it seems like for every 10 podcasts I pick up and listen to, I only keep one of them. And of the 10 of the ones I keep over the 10 months or so, I'll only keep 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. When I first started listening to podcasts, I sort of just picked them up here and there. And the ones that I listened to, the day, because I got an iPod Nano the day iPod Nanos were announced. Steve Jobs pulled it out of his pocket, and I went to the Apple website and I clicked. Mostly because my iPod Mini was busted.
I wonder how that happened.
Yeah, so not because I'm a sucker for Steve Jobs, because I'm not. Anyway, and as soon as I got that iPod Nano, a couple days later, I started listening to podcasts because I started using iTunes. And, I subscribed to a whole bunch of podcasts. And almost none of those do I still subscribe to. Maybe 2. That's it.
I mean, we've talked about this before, and we did a long, very popular thread in the forums about it. But this is kind of an update, what we're listening to right now. Partly because I want to give props to all the podcasts I actually like, because I don't listen to many podcasts.
No, I mean, now I'm for a while, recently, say the past few weeks, maybe the past month, my podcast listening has declined. I subscribe to a bunch of shows, and I see them there in my, iTunes, and I say, man, that's a good show. I like that show. I don't want to unsubscribe from it. But every time I go and pick up my iPod and say, all right, I want to listen to a podcast now, I look, and I just don't feel like listening to most of the stuff that's on there.
Yeah. I mean, I got to admit, and it really gives credit to Dave and Joel, Fast Karate for the Gentlemen, but whenever I sit down in my iPod, they're usually the first ones I go to after I listen to the news. It's
Yeah.
I listen to the news, and then I look, and I've got a Dragon's Landing that's been sitting there forever, and I've got, one of all the podcasts I respect, and I always just go for the Dave and Joel, and then the Anime World Order, and then...
I go for those pretty quickly as well. But I don't know if I'm going to shamefully admit that I go for Twit right away. I don't know why.
Really? You still listen to Twit?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can't really put a finger on it, but I don't know.
I don't know. I don't enjoy Twit very much.
I
Partly
get the
'cause-
same feeling of listening to Twit that I get from reading Slashdot in the year 2002.
I can see that.
Yeah, so that's kind of why I go for it. Plus, it only comes out once a week. Oh, all right. You know what podcast I go to right away? And you're not going to like this, but there's a TV show on ESPN.
Oh, that thing.
Yeah, that thing called Pardon the Interruption. Now, I know a lot of people listening aren't sports fans, and if you are, you're probably not American.
Football!
You're probably not sports fans in the United States, so you probably don't know about this show because I think it's only on in the U.S. and Canada. Yeah. It's basically a show where these two sports journalist guys do basically sort of what we do, not really. And they like have a rundown of all these sports topics on the right. And they just go through them real quick, and they always argue with each other. And then they'll play a fun game. Like, they'll have a game called, like, Odds Makers. Like, you know, what are the chances that this is going to happen? And one guy will be like, 30% chance that will happen. The other guy will be like, 0% chance that will happen. And they get, you know, they do fun stuff. And the show's only like a half hour long. So a lot of short trips. It's like really convenient. Whereas most other podcasts seem to be at least an hour long. At least most other good podcasts. So it's like one of the few podcasts in that mid-length range. Because it's an audio recording of a TV show that you don't really need to look at, because who wants to look at these ugly journalists' faces? And they cover, you know, pretty much all the entertaining sports news. Like, they don't cover, like, who won and who lost. They cover, like, all the drama of sports. Like, that guy's going to court with roids. Or, oh, this guy, you know, he's lost 5 in a row, even though after he talked big, what now? And it's kind of funny. So...
Huh?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about absolute, what I go for first no matter what, hands down is 12 Byzantine emperors.
Yeah.
Or 12 Byzantine rulers, if you will.
See, that's another one of those ones where I like it a lot, but I have it, and I subscribe to it, and I've listened to a bunch of episodes, but I still have some episodes that I haven't listened to, like 6 or 7 of them.
If one comes out, I will go out of my way to listen to it. Like, if one came out on a weekend, I would probably sit in my room and listen to it.
Yeah, I've got like 6 or 7 most recent ones I haven't listened to, and not because I don't want to, but like the mood never strikes me. Like, I look it and I see it there in the iPod, and I just don't feel like it.
No.
But I leave it there because I know one day I feel like it.
Yep, I mean, I've listened to all of them that are out right now twice, and I usually, right after I listen to one, I go online, I find maps, and I kind of correlate where all the stuff happened and where the armies were and try to get a sense of everything.
Yeah.
But then again, I've been on a really big Roman/Byzantine/Parthian history kick lately.
I mostly like Byzantine emperors more as like I treat it less as a historical thing because I can't remember all that crap, and it doesn't really matter to me. But I listen to it more of like a drama fictional type of thing. Like, oh man, that guy totally punned that guy.
Yep. That's the brilliance of it. That's why I think it's one of the best podcasts out there.
Yeah, because he he takes history and he shows you the entertaining drama that sort of maybe really happened. And
well, the thing is, I mean, earlier in the podcast run, when he's talking about when the Byzantine Empire was still much more like the Roman Empire in the West, it's much more historically verifiable than some of the later ones, because the world was slowly descending into the medieval Dark Ages. So it goes a little more fanciful as time goes on because history wasn't as well recorded.
Yep.
But that also leads to a lot of humor.
Humor and history, those don't mix. Yeah. 12 Byzantine Emperors is great.
Yeah, honestly, pretty much right after that, I always go right for NPR, It's All Politics.
Yeah, I used to see when I first, that's another one. When I first started listening to podcasts, I had like 3 or 4 NPRs. Like I had NPR, like best thing of the day, and I had NPR technology, and I had NPR something else, and now I don't listen to NPR anything.
Really? I mean, NPR Health and Technology, Health and Science.
Yep.
Technology. Now, I just recently added the BBC World News whatever, along with BBC Documentary Archives, and the NPR It's All Politics. I listen to all of those.
Oh, yeah, I would listen to, like, the NPR, like, headlines, like the headlines of the day, the biggest news. I would listen to that, too, but not anymore.
I used to listen to All Things Considered, but it was the opinions bit, and, like, 4 of them in a row were really disagreeable opinions from fairly stupid people. So I kind of stopped listening, and now I looked and I realized that it was just a bad run, so I'm thinking about picking that back up.
I guess it's just that, like, the NPR stuff, since it's mostly news, I read Google News. I'm actually using that We News quite a bit, and I really don't care what other people's opinions are so much, because I just form my own, and I get the information from somewhere, so listening to a guy say it feels like it takes a longer time than it takes me to read it, It's sort of like a waste.
See, here's the thing,
and
though.
It doesn't entertain me.
All the news sites on the internet, other than pretty much Google News, and even there, they like the science section on Digg is mostly garbage.
That's why I block the science section on Digg. I don't look at it at all.
So I listen to NPR Health and Science, and I learn all the stuff that I wouldn't learn on the internet because there really aren't good websites that are fun and easy to read that cover that.
That's true. I guess I'm just not interested
Plus,
in learning about health and science.
Well, I guess I am. I'm also very interested in hearing the opinions of experts because they aid me in forming my own opinions.
Yeah, I also actually really like hearing the opinions of experts. The problem is every time I listen to a podcast and I think that, I'm looking for expert opinions, I always go away feeling like they're not experts. And I don't know, it's like when I was in college, like I would hear like political...
Yeah.
I would hear political scientists speak about things, and I was like, damn, they know what they're fucking talking about. And I haven't found a podcast other than Byzantine emperors, but that's history, not political science, where people talk about that stuff. It gives me the same feeling of that guy knows what he's fucking talking about that I got in college.
That was very eloquently stated in a very non-eloquent way, Scott.
Yeah.
It's people, you're like, I want fucking educated shit out there, man.
That's right.
That's great.
Yep.
No, but actually, the It's All Politics guys, I mean, obviously they do their research ahead of time, but they know a lot about American politics. And they treat it the way sports fans treat sports. So instead of the commentary be like, well, no baseball team has ever won the World Series if it lost 8 games in February. But
they don't play baseball in February.
I know. Hence, what I just said is 100% accurate.
Okay.
Think about it.
Maybe.
It is. No team has ever won the World Series if it lost 8 games in February.
Yeah.
Anyway, but they point out things like that in politics. Like recently I learned that no Republican has ever been elected president of the United States without having won the Republican primary in South Carolina, the first Southern Republican primary.
Uh-huh.
And that's really interesting. And I'm curious to see how that plays out in the current political climate as things start moving toward the U.S. presidential election.
Yeah, so keep your eye on the South Carolina primary for Republicans.
Yeah.
And, however that turns out, if that guy isn't nominated...
Though, these guys...
Or that person isn't nominated, and if that person is nominated, we'll see if they're going to win or not.
These guys are old, and, they were talking about The Tonight Show with Carson. And then they were talking about the guy before Carson.
Yeah, I don't know who that is.
Me either. But they kept talking about it. And they're talking about their alienating...
All the old people listening to our show just had, heart attacks.
The first thing I thought was... There was somebody on that show before Carson. I thought he started the show because I didn't know.
I have no idea.
I never even saw the Carson. I saw Carson's show twice.
I never saw it, but I never really watched Letterman or Leno or anybody.
Nah, me either.
I don't watch those shows.
The only show I ever watched like that was
I saw it once in the laundromat.
The Daily Show with Craig Kilborn.
Yep.
And then The Daily Show
Stewart.
with Jon Stewart, who was far superior.
I saw some public access show also.
Well, let's see. Actually, one that I listen to regularly, but recently I went through the archives and listened to pretty much every episode I had any interest in is Movies You Should See. Yeah. I really like that podcast.
Yeah, Movies You Should See, I sort of get this, it's like a sine wave of interest. Like about 5 or 6 of them will build up, and then I'll really want to listen to them, and I'll listen to one, and then that one will, it'll prime... my attitude for the rest of them, and I'll be like, oh, that was great, and I'll listen to the rest.
Yep.
And then I'll clear them all out, and then I won't have any.
It's like an avalanche.
Then when they start building up again, I'll be like, I don't want to listen to that.
I think part of it, and this is going to sound funny, but, they're smart people, and they know what they're talking about, but they talk with Albionic accents, which, to Americans, tends to sound educated.
I don't know why that is.
Or villainous.
But it's true.
It's one of the two. It's either educated or villainous. And they're obviously, with the possible exception, well, I'm not going to get into that, villainous. So they sound very educated.
Yeah.
And it lends a certain air of authority to their show.
Yeah. Let this be a note to anyone from Albion. If you have an accent, it is likely that you can sound very intelligent and Americans will respect what you have to say.
I can think of one or two Albionic accents that don't particularly garner that respect. Oi! Put the flowers in the vase! Get in!
Yeah, don't talk like that. Then Americans will just think you're insane or something. Let's see, another good example of a podcast where when I first started listening to podcasts, the IT Conversations, that whole network of podcasts there.
Yep.
Like, I subscribed to, like, a whole bunch of those. The problem is when it was a hit, it was a hit. Like, you would hear some guy doing a presentation at some tech conference that you couldn't afford to go to or fly to, and it would be the best thing ever. But then, like, the next 3 or 4 of those, because they would do every single panel and presentation from every conference, would be, like, crap and useless. And it was like, what the fuck? So I stopped listening just because I had a hard time weeding out the wheat from the chaff when it comes to the IT Conversations. But now I actually realized that most of the ones that I liked were ones that dealt with open source and Linux and the stuff that I'm interested in. Gasp. That's a big surprise.
Ah.
So now I actually I don't listen to any IT Conversations, but I do listen to Floss Weekly, which is not so weekly. It's one of those Twit network podcasts, but it basically has Chris DeBona, who's a guy who I think worked at Slashdot, but he works at Google now, and the Leo guy, and they get, like, the hot shit in the open source world, and they interview them. And even when they get people I never heard of, it is like every single episode of that podcast, even though it's far from weekly, is hella interesting. Like, when they interview the freaking Python guy, and they interview the OpenNMS guy, and they get, Eben Moglen, who's like the Free Software Foundation lawyer on there.
Yeah, I listened to that one. He's a really interesting man.
Yeah, there's a lot. Every episode of that podcast, even if you don't know anything about open source software, holy shit, is that one fantastic show.
But I've been listening to Security Now off and on.
See, there's another one that I listened to when I first started listening to podcasts. Now I don't listen to it all.
See, I listen to it very selectively because they periodically seem to get on these stints. They talk about nothing but, like, Vista Security, and I don't care at all about Vista Security. Like, I care about that less than I care about just about anything.
I don't know. There are things I care about less than Vista Security, but Vista Security's pretty low. I got to admit.
But I tried to listen to, because I'm interested in law and law school and all that. So I thought, all right, I'm going to find a law podcast. And aside from the million prepare for the LSATs, which I really don't want to bother with, I thought, hey, I'll check out This Week in Law, Twill. And I listened to 2 episodes. And now
didn't one of those have the Calacanis guy?
Oh, whatever. That wasn't the...
That guy, I gotta let everyone know, Jason Calacanis is a guy who was like a Netscape AOL big time blog guy. Like, he had something to do with Engadget and stuff, and he's sort of an important internet guy. But don't listen to any podcast he is on, because he is the most annoying, interrupting, annoying guy ever.
See, there was none of that on the show. All I got out of it is that this was the most boring podcast in the world.
Really?
And they didn't even really talk about law. It's not like they were talking about complicated things and therefore the uneducated Rim was bored by it. It was just boring. Everyone talked in this, not even like the NPR. This week on NPR News, we're going to blah, 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 blah. It was just, it was so boring I almost fell asleep at the wheel listening to it.
I never listened to the show, so now I'm not going to.
Yeah.
I wonder if, what would be really cool? This may or may not exist. I've never searched for it. But if there was, like, a law podcast that, like, just reviewed court cases that happened recently. Like, this week in court, so-and-so case of so-and-so. And they just talked about the case and why it was interesting. Or even past cases.
No, I just got to look more. I really just want to find a nice, like, law review podcast.
Yeah, just like, this case of so-and-so for so-and-so. Let's talk about it. Well, this guy was complaining about this shit, and this guy was complaining about this shit. In the end, this happened, and this is why, and this is the law, and this is why the judge interpreted that way, and the jury decided this because... And...
I imagine there are good ones out there. I just haven't... There's really still no easy way to find podcasts, especially now that Digg podcast searching suddenly broke.
I don't know, maybe it's fixed again?
I don't know, I haven't checked,
Yeah.
But it's kind of useless.
And iTunes podcast searching has never been that great.
I hate iTunes podcast searching.
Yeah.
So yeah, if there's any good law podcasts out there, let me know.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Let's see.
I tried to find a few Learn Japanese podcasts. They were all okay. I found a Learn French podcast that was so bad I could cry.
Let's see. What other podcasts am I way
I always
into?
keep at least one Roadhouse and one Derek the Bandit, but that's just in case I need some music to listen to and I don't have any music on me.
Well, I actually paid to get Roadhouse Premium that has extra songs and no ads, and it was totally worth it because the price was so ridiculously low. It was like $20 for a year or something like that.
I would, except I don't listen. I listen to more of my own MP3s than I do podcasts.
See, that's
MP3s.
the other thing is that I don't really load music on my iPod so much, just because I have to set up a big thing and I have to make playlists, and it's a whole to do. So, and I also don't download his music as frequently as I used to. So I listen to the Roadhouse to get awesome blues music, and I listen to Derek the Bandit to get awesome trance from South Africa. I need like a rock podcast. Like I've listened to a few, but they all sort of have that indie, like hip alternative kind of rock, and not the old school hard rock that I like.
I found a lot of podcasts that sound like they're about music, or they'll have music in them. And then you listen to them, and it's just some guy talking about the music for like 45 minutes, and then they play one song.
Yeah, those are no good.
I found an awesome happy hardcore podcast that disappeared after 3 episodes. Granted, I think he was just pirating mixes, but whatever. I want my happy hardcore.
Yeah, I think the reason that, of all the music podcasts that the Roadhouse and Derek the Bandit really kind of stick around is because they mostly play music, and there's an awesome person emceeing the music, and that awesome person comes in between songs to tell you what the song was, and maybe a few other interesting bits, but they keep it brief, and they don't overdo it, and the music they play is awesome, and within the genre, and the production value is high. So, yeah.
Now, scarily, and Scott has mentioned this to me independently of me noticing I've been doing it, but more often than you would expect, I find myself listening to Geeknights.
Yeah.
Like more.
Yeah, I do it too.
See, usually I put, like every week, I put 1 or 2 episodes on my iPod. I don't listen to them. I don't plan to listen to them, other than to spot check in my car to make sure the audio sounds okay in different settings. Like, I'll listen to it in my work on the computer, just briefly. I'll listen to it in the car briefly, just to make sure that the levels are okay. Whatever experiment I'm doing with the compressor didn't make anything sound bad, all that. More than half the time, I end up listening to the whole episode. And it's kind of weird.
It is. I mean, in the early days of Geeknights, I always felt weird listening to the show. It's like, yeah, because I hadn't done so many shows, I remembered everything I said because it was like the 3rd show or whatever. So listening to it was kind of like, just like, yeah, I'm here. I remember saying that. And it wasn't entertaining or anything. I just was like, all right, I'm tired of listening to myself.
It's just kind of weird. I mean, there is something awkward about hearing your own voice on the radio.
Yeah, it was just weird and not entertaining at all. Nowadays, sometimes I'll pop in a Geeknights episode, especially if it's one like, I remember like the initial D one and the Utena one.
Where we did something weird with music.
Yeah, because we put lots of music in it, and I wanted to hear how the music sounded. And I listened to the show, and like as I listened, I didn't remember everything we said, but it came back to me as I listened to it, and the music was awesome, and I was actually entertained a lot listening to my own show.
Now, this brings up a serious question.
More than many other podcasts I listen to.
Because I overheard at, I think it was Otakon 3 years, I forget, but 2 artists in the Artist Alley were talking about drawing pornography, and they were debating whether or not it's weird to get off from pornography that you yourself had drawn. That's a lot like where we're going with Geeknights right now.
Yeah. I mean, if you're out there and you're a podcaster, right? Tell us if you are entertained listening to your own podcast, because we kind of are, even though we didn't used to be. And I don't know what to think of that. Does that mean our show is so awesome that even the people who make it are entertained?
Or are we just such fucking egoists?
Yeah, what does it mean? I don't know what it means.
Are we narcissistic? Are we stupid?
Yeah, I have no idea. We need some help.
All right.
We need to, if you're a person who does television, tell me if you enjoy watching your own television show.
Well, wasn't it Pendula was talking to one guy who apparently keeps archives of everything he's ever done on TV and watches them all the time.
Oh, all right.
That was a while ago.
Wait, if that guy's weird though, are we weird for being
I don't know
like
if he
that
was
guy?
weird or not. I barely listen to Penn anymore. I listen to like once a week.
Yeah, I also barely listen to Penn anymore. I don't know what it is. It just seems like after a while, all the shows felt kind of the same.
I only
and
listen,
it was just background. It's good background noise still.
I only listen when he's interviewing someone interesting.
Yeah, but most of the time it's just the same old stuff, and it's like, yes, Penn, I've heard you say this before. Yes, all right. Yes, I guess part of it is also because I can't call into the show. Like, maybe if I was listening live, it would be a little bit better, because then I'd call in all the time.
Well, the only time I've ever interacted with the show, I had an argument with Michael Godot.
Yeah.
And I was trying to educate him as to some Linux things and such, and he was getting kind of, you stupid computer people, blah, blah, blah. And it ended on somewhat terse terms.
Yeah.
At least he responded. I'll give him credit for that.
It's not like he's got anything better to do. He's a juggler.
All right.
Oh.
But to wrap this up, I mentioned earlier a contest, and we thought about this downstairs, and during the show, I thought about how I want to do this.
I think we're going to start one contest for each day of the week.
Yeah, and we'll just generally have a contest for each day of the week all the time. So of course,
yesterday, we started the contest for MD Geist, right?
yes, very briefly, listen to yesterday's episode. We'll mention it every Wednesday for a while.
Wait, I think we should just do the contest. We should only mention the contest for the day of the week that they're for.
All right, yeah, so listen to yesterday or next Wednesday if you want to hear about the MD Geist contest.
Yep.
Anyway, the Thursday contest, and I'm interested in this for a number of reasons. I want you to find for us and tell us why it's bad the worst podcast out there.
Now, wait, I got to put some restrictions
Oh,
on
I already
this.
wrote down a bunch of restrictions.
All right,
'Cause-
number one.
Wait, it's too easy to just find like a podcast with one episode that wasn't even in iTunes.
That's right. It's got to be a podcast that keeps going.
So
it has
here's
to
my
have some
rules.
sort of regularity.
Here's my rules. 1, it must have at least 20 episodes online available for download in the feed.
All right.
2, it
But
must
what if the feed is only 10 episodes, but there's 20 on the site? It's got to be 20
All
episodes
right,
available.
20 episodes available, and the feed must be active. 2, the feed must be listed in iTunes.
Ah.
Because if you can't get yourself in iTunes, you failed.
There
as a
are a lot of
podcaster.
people who aren't allowed in iTunes. Like, I don't think Happy House of Hentai is in there. Stuff like that. So what should you do about those guys?
No, leave them out. 'Cause
Okay.
that's also too easy.
But I know that there's like also like this pro pedophile and there's another like pro white supremacy podcast that aren't allowed in there.
Yeah, I don't care about that. I don't care about the content.
Because those could be the worst podcasts ever.
No, because I'm not talking about that. I want to hear the worst podcast in terms of it's just bad and unlistenable regardless of the content.
Okay.
Not
okay.
necessarily audio quality. Maybe the people have annoying voices. Maybe they're just so incompetent. Maybe they don't know how to edit.
Maybe it's a guy going for 10 minutes and he says one sentence.
Yeah. They also, this podcast, the worst podcast ever, has to have a website,
All right.
and it has to have put up an episode within the last month, at least.
All right. That sounds good. Oh, and you can't like just suddenly make like 20 podcasts in one day that are as bad as you can make them. It can't be something that's made by you or anyone you know, or you can't make a podcast for the purposes of winning this contest.
Yeah, think of it this way. We want you to do recon for us, partly because we want to make fun of podcasts, partly because I'm curious just how bad and deep the rabbit hole goes, because the worst podcasts I've heard, I found, and they had some level of respectability, but they were still crap. Yet there were podcasts that had a fraction of the listeners that they had.
Wow.
And I can't imagine what those podcasts are. I want to know. I want you to find for me the bottom.
So what are they going to win?
I haven't decided that yet.
Oh.
I'm going to do this contest.
So how are you going to encourage people to enter a contest to win a mystery prize?
Well, because I guarantee we'll have a good prize by the end of it, and I'm going to run this contest for at least a month. I want people to spend some time on this.
All right. So, mystery prize. Ooh. It could be poop in a box.
I guarantee it will not be poop in a box.
It'll be an empty box.
Seriously, it'll be a real prize of some kind. I mean, we have a real prize for the MD Geist contest.
Poop in a box.
Well, in a manner of speaking.
That's what I'm saying. All right. Is this show over?
I think it's over.
One last note is that we didn't mention every podcast we listen to, but I keep my OPML on my website and you can go look at it and see what I'm subscribed to right now.
And also to all of our friend podcasters, if I didn't say that I listened to your show, remember that part of that is due to the fact that I really only listen to podcasts in my car. And I'm only in my car 10 hours a week. And I have about 30 to 40 hours a week of podcasts subscribed to. So you can see where that goes.
Yeah. Oh, and also all our friend podcasters, if Rim doesn't listen to your show, I listen to it sometimes.
This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com, where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geeknights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com. Or you can send audio feedback via Odeo. Just click the link that says Send Me an Odeo on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.